Welcome to SQL Malibu. Today we have a presentation by Armando Lacerda, and the presentation is going to be about, yes, the guy that actually waves over there. The presentation is today about Microsoft Azure, and I think two products, Armando, correct me if I'm wrong, Azure VM and Azure SQL Database.
Yeah, we're going to go through those.
Okay, I'm going to turn over to Armando. I'm going to mute myself.
All right, so welcome everyone. Welcome to the Malibu user group. And actually, you guys are welcoming me, right? I'm visiting around. I'm connecting from my place here in Fairfield, Northern California. It's like 30 miles, 40 miles, I rather say, north of San Francisco. And I was last year there at LA at the SQL Saturday LA. It was a blast. It was a great event. I think Steve is already planning the now. I know he's already planning the next one. Is dealing with the details. So keep your eyes out, right? Look out for the next SQL Saturday in LA. We're gonna have one in Orange County in a couple of weeks. I think 8 or 7 weeks ahead. So I'm also gonna be there. So if you wanna come and have a full day of training, right? Multiple sessions all day long with multiple presenters. I'll be one of them there. Come along and perhaps we can have a lunch together. All right. Okay. So I think this camera here is gonna be a distraction because it's just me talking. I'm gonna turn off the camera, and when questions come up or I finish doing something, I will get the camera back on. All right. So camera off. And it was also just a chance for us to see how ugly I look. Okay, so we are, so we are here for the session on getting your feet wet on Azure if you are a SQL Server professional and you have not dealt with SQL Server, with Azure yet. So I have planned this presentation. Let me get this guy back in. I've planned this presentation with 4 topics. The first one is looking around the Azure ecosystem to understand what's the take on Microsoft, what's the Microsoft take on how to implement Azure, how to implement cloud, right? The cloud, I would say technology, but it's actually the offering. Microsoft used to be known as a company that sells boxes, right? The idea of when you buy Windows, you get a box with media inside, and Windows is there, and Office and everything else. And if you have been to any retail store like Fry's or Costco or anything, you have noticed that Office is not sold on box anymore. It's just like a card, right? A thick card in there with some license, some number in there. So you go in and you register yourself. So Microsoft's not selling boxes anymore. Now it's completely a service. They still sell license, of course, but the whole business is towards cloud offering, which is pretty much service. So you're gonna see on the first topic in there how that is conveyed by Microsoft, how it organizes itself, and then you're gonna look into specifics on SQL Server when you want to move SQL Server to the cloud. There are two approaches to get SQL Server up to the cloud. One is what people call lift and shift. And the idea is, I have SQL Server running on premise on a VM in Hyper-V, for instance. So can I get my VHD that I have created in Hyper-V, upload it to the cloud and start running it in a VM in the cloud? So that's what we're going to investigate on the second topic. And on the third topic, it's more like, I have a database, the VM has a bunch of other stuff in there, but I don't want to get the whole VM up to the cloud. I just want to have a particular database to the cloud. So can I do that? Can I move just the database to the cloud? And that's what we're going to see on the third topic. And the fourth topic, it's more to see what are the other database engines we have there in Microsoft Azure, right, in the Microsoft Cloud, and how some of them look like SQL Server, but there is they are not SQL Server, and sometimes they don't even resemble anything that it's in the SQL Server suite when you get the Microsoft Suite, SQL Server Suite. So about questions, if you have any questions as we move along here, Steve is monitoring the Zoom group, I mean the chat window in the Zoom group. So if you have any questions in there, just make sure you post to everyone. And I may break in here in between. I will ask Steven if any questions came up and I haven't seen, but there is a slide at the end for questions as well. All right. So yeah, just wait around and ask your questions. Okay, so first thing here, I would like to show you this, which is a very cool design. I have found a couple of years ago on another presentation. There is this one of Microsoft partners. I can't remember the partner name right now, but they did this very cool design here, which they call the Azure Periodic Table. So Azure is a collection, like I said, Azure is a collection of Microsoft services running on Microsoft data centers. We just sign up and we select which services we want to use. And what I like about this design, about this Azure Periodic Table, is that it kind of organizes the services that are in there by colors, right? So you can kind of understand them by colors, which is kind of cool. Like if you get the purple one on almost the top right, you see there Azure AD Sync and Azure AD and Azure ADDC. You got some Azure stuff in there, Azure AD stuff in there. So this is the collection of services that are available for identity and access management. So, it helps you understand how the servers are organized. But as a matter of fact, this one here is a great illustration, but it's not really a complete picture of all the services that are in there in Azure. There are a lot of more services that are not in this Azure Periodic Table. So when I'm presenting this session, people usually ask, can I get your slide deck and get this picture and use it? Of course you can, right? It's free on the internet. Actually, you can Google it, you're gonna find it. But keep in mind that what you see there is not the full collection of services you find in Azure. It's just to give you an idea that some services, they work together with other services. They're kind of designed to work together with other services. There are a bunch of services that are designed to work by themselves, and you can connect to it from other services as well, but they kind of isolated as silent. In this presentation here, we're going to focus on these guys, right? We're going to tackle first the virtual machines over here, right? I believe you can see my mouse. So we're going to tackle first the virtual machines. And then you're going to see the PaaS offering for SQL Server. Down here, right? Here, which one? Yeah, this one. SQL Server, this guy here. And the other offerings for data storage, like the storage place and table storage. That gets a lot of people confused about that. It's a table storage, so I can create a table, right? Like SQL Server can create a table. We're gonna see that one too. We're gonna see the Elastic table, Elastic database actually. So we're gonna take a look on that one. And another one that's very, very deceiving, that's the Azure Data Warehouse. So these are the services I'm planning to go around here with you. And of course, you should research on the other ones if you plan to do something more comprehensive in Azure.
Armando?
Yes.
I think there is a question. You can skip my question about why is it called Azure, but there is a question from Elena. If you can take a look at the chat.
All right, so I'm not going to skip your question. You're such a good host. So why is it called Azure? Well, it's funny because, Azure is the color blue, has the blue in the sky in French. So, I think it was a good catch, a good catchy name. But what really blows my mind is, the Azure is the color of the sky when there is no cloud.
Oh, God.
You know, kind of a what? But it's a good name. I like the name. I don't know. What about the other one? I think you said that the table was not made by Microsoft. The table was not made by Microsoft. If you're talking about who was this, this was Elena. So Elena, if you're talking about the Azure Blob Storage, what I meant to say here is some people, some developers, some people work with databases, they look at Azure Table Service, Blob Table Service, and they think, oh, okay, this is SQL Server. So we can use like it was Microsoft SQL Server. Like create a table, like you create a table in SQL Server, and there is nothing to it. It's not, it doesn't resemble anything like that, right? So that's what I meant by the Azure Table Service in there. All right. Oh, now at the end she says can't wait until the end, so doesn't have to wait anymore. Okay. All right, moving on. So we're gonna get a demo on this one here in a bit. But if you're moving to the cloud, if you're start grasping the cloud services, every cloud provider out there, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and some others in there, they all classify their services into three categories. They are either software as a service, platform as a service, and infrastructure as a service, as you see there on this slide. And the idea is, using Microsoft platform, if you are signing up for Office 365, for instance, you are signing up for software as a service. If you are signing up for Power BI, for instance, you are signing up for software as a service. Unless if you get the premium subscription, but that's like an exception. So, these two things are software as a service. And the idea of a software as a service is I get the software and I don't have to worry about anything on maintenance of this software. So if there are any upgrades, they will do these upgrades for me. If I need storage, they will provide storage for me. I really don't have to worry about tuning anything. It's an end user kind of thing. So Salesforce, for instance, is a software as a service cloud company, and so far, so on. I like a comparison that people do with like a hotel, right? If you go software as a service, you're pretty much going like a hotel. You check into the hotel, you just sleeping there, use whatever is in there, and when you go out during the day and come back at night, the room is ready for you, everything is great, and you didn't have to do anything to the room itself because somebody else took care of it for you. So it's kind of a hotel service, right? And just whenever time you need, I'm here, I'm ready, use, and I'll keep it running for you all the time. It's like Motel 6, right? We keep the lights on for you, or something like that. The platform as a service is the most interesting one, is the one that we are more focused on here. And the idea of a platform as a service from Microsoft is you are going to use services, software as a service, but in a sense that it's like a back-end or computing processing software. So it's not SaaS because it's not the end user. It's like building blocks for you to create applications. So you're going to create a website for people to use, and you need some machine learning on your website because you're going to do face recognition through the website, for instance, and you need to keep data, so you're going to need a database as well. But you don't want to get involved into get the hardware of this ready to work and keep it maintained and the OS behind it. So you are going for platform as a service, meaning I'm going to go to the Microsoft offerings in the clouds in Azure, and I'm going to choose like app service to get my website hosted into an app service. So that's one service. I go to the periodic table and I pick up app service, and then I'm gonna go back there and choose the Azure Active Directory for authentication. like our Xboxes. If you own an Xbox, like they do all the time when you start up your Xbox and authenticate in the cloud there. So I'm gonna choose, like I said, app service. I'm gonna choose Active Directory. I'm gonna choose perhaps machine learning and stream analytics to take care of some of these messages and images that are coming through. And I'm gonna use Azure SQL database to store the data for my web application. So from the Microsoft offerings, I've chosen 4 services, and all of them is software processing, right? 4 building blocks, and I'm gonna write code to put this thing together, to have them working together, and I'm gonna deploy my application. So this is platform as a service. You again get your building blocks, stitch them together, and you have your application going. This is where we want to live in Azure, in Microsoft Cloud, right? This is where you want to live. You really want to design, you really want to architect. If you are like planning to become a Microsoft Azure architect, most of the times, for the majority of the systems, you more likely want to pick a platform as a service, PaaS blocks, and put them together, because there is where the money saving is, right? You really save money when you go in platform as a service, because the way Microsoft offers it is always the cheapest way to achieve any processing in the cloud. The other one is infrastructure as a service. And the idea of infrastructure as a service is any hardware you see around around your company, around your office, around your enterprise. So any hardware that you see deployed in there, like I have a data center, and my data center have this racks, and in the racks I have the servers, in the servers I have the operating systems, the virtualization systems in there, and I run my VMs on that virtualization servers. So those would be your infrastructure as a service, with one tweak. In a cloud, you never actually see the hardware. You have an idea what kind of hardware is supporting your infrastructure, but you really don't buy the hardware or rent the hardware, right? You rent infrastructure services that are about the hardware. So in that case, it would be the virtual networks. Actually, most of the things will be called virtual. So like, let's say I need to deploy my, you know what? Let me do something here to get this more real. White. Oh, it's not showing there on the screen, but it will show up in a second. So let's say here, whoops, wrong screen. Let me get this on the right screen. I have 2 monitors here. I'm sharing only one of them. So let me get this here to the right monitor. Perfect. So this is a new application from Microsoft called Whiteboard. And I do got a computer here with a pen. So let's go ahead and use this. So let's say, you're moving your computing to the cloud, and you have some databases and, some servers as well that you want to keep isolated in the network by themselves. And this network here should not be connected to the public internet. People should not be able to see this thing. So this would be a VNet. So I'm sorry, the monitor is mumbling a little bit. So let me get this guy out, and let's write this better. Oops, VNet, there we go. VNet. So a VNet is an infrastructure as a service offering from Microsoft Azure. So I can create a VNet in here, and I can attach things to my VNet. That VNet will have a gateway that can connect that VNet to other VNets. So I may have other services, like here I got a VM and a SQL database, and this one here would be PaaS, right? It's a platform as a service, and a VM doing something else in here. And in another VNet here, I could have my, let's say my website. And this website here is actually, should be connected to the public internet. So this VNet here is actually connected to the public internet. and I would have a gateway connecting these two. So you can see this thing on your own local network. A lot of companies, they do like that. They have a secured network where private data and assets are secured in there, and they have like a DMZ, and then DMZ connects to the public internet. You can do the same layout, no change, in Azure using infrastructure as a service and taking advantage of VNets and gateways. And there is also the virtual network card that connects a VM to a VNet. So all of these physical things we see around in the network, they are available there in the cloud, depending on the service you are using. Like the virtual NIC is for virtual machines only. The PaaS services, they can connect to VNet, but they don't have a dedicated network card. And here on this VNet here, I would like to have, if it was on premise, I would like to have a firewall, right? So I would have a firewall here, a firewall here on my design, and in this one here will be a network security group, like the policies you have in the firewall. So you have everything you have on premise. You have also available has infrastructure as a service at Microsoft's cloud at Azure. The catching here is when you go like this, when you go for infrastructure as a service, and you have the option to run SQL Server either on a VM you want to come up with, you want to either upload from your local network or create a brand new one from the portal. So I want to create a VM in Azure with my SQL Server running there. If you compare performance by performance, right, with the VM deployment and PaaS deployment, PaaS will always be cheaper. It's always cheaper. And when we compare prices, you have to keep in mind, you should compare not just the service price, like the VM costs $3,000 a month and the PaaS would cost $2,000 a month, but you also have to keep in mind that the infrastructure as a service, you have to maintain the virtual machine. So any patches, any cumulative updates, and service packs, anything that needs to be done at any level at the virtual machine is on you. You have to manage it. So there will be, the cost involved in getting people to maintain this this network infrastructure, to automate patch distribution and things like that. With PaaS, we don't have that, right? So like I said, SaaS would be like a hotel. I would say like PaaS would be like a Airbnb kind of a deal, right? Because you have more resources, you have more flexibility, but when you leave, you really don't have to clean up the whole thing, right? The owners will take care of the apartment for the next guest. But if you go infrastructure as a service, it's like you buying the house, right? You are actually buying the house, and you are responsible for everything in the house. If outlets stop working, you have to go there and fix it. If I'm an Airbnb or rental kind of thing, if outlet stops working, I don't have to worry about it. Just call someone that's gonna fix it for me. It happened to me the other day. I was on a virtual machine, not a virtual machine, sorry. I was on a Power BI premium capacity. The thing crashed. I just went to the website, called Microsoft there, say, look, hey, that there stopped working. And in a couple hours, they have the thing back working there. I have no idea what happened inside. Actually, I emailed them to understand the root cause of the issue. I'm still waiting for a response. Because when you go platform as a service, you focus on the service. You really don't focus on the infrastructure and the updates of the OS. Is that clear enough? Does it make sense so far? Hope so. The chat window is kind of quiet. Elena said yes. Thank you, Elena. So with Elena's answer, I move on. I think she speaks for everybody. All right. One extra thing I really want you to keep in mind, and this is also very important when you are designing your move to the cloud when you work with Azure. So here you have your company, right? This side here you have your company. Your company has an internet provider that's connected you to the public internet. You are connecting there like we are right now here. And from there you have access to the whole internet, including Azure, everything you do in Azure, and anybody else in there. Like I put Google here just for instance, but Amazon and the whole internet, right? You have access to the whole internet. The point here is when you start doing massive data movement in between my company. Let me see if my pen works here. In between my, no, it didn't. Move back. It's not writing. For some reason, pen is not writing. So in between my company and Azure, I am sharing the pipeline here, right? This internet connection with my public people, my public audience in the company. So anybody browsing the internet, downloading files, watching Netflix, they shouldn't, but happens, or downloading files from torrents and things like that. They are, using the same bandwidth that I'm using to do my SQL data movement, either uploading a couple terabytes of data to Azure or downloading data from queries that people are using my internal systems, and they're querying data from Azure SQL database, and they expect to see the result on their local applications in my company. So this works, but usually it's not the best deployment you can have. There is this service called, is the title, the slide's title there, Express Route. There is this service called Express Route, where you create a dedicated connection in between your company's network and Azure's network. So whatever browsing, whatever service that your company is using in Azure and your applications are touching, like, connecting to SQL Server in our case, instead of going this route here, oops, sorry, move back, was a bad click here. Instead of going this route here to Azure, again, sharing the bandwidth to the public internet, it will go this route here, right? This dedicated route with a guaranteed bandwidth performance to Azure. So small companies, maybe they don't need that because it will be extra costs, and perhaps they cannot afford this extra cost, or they just don't have that high demand because they're not using SQL Server. In SQL Server, you need a lot of bandwidth usually to have your data there moved to the cloud. And but for most companies, signing up for Express Route does make sense. Right, it does make sense because it's a guaranteed network performance, and usually we want to have a reliable, guaranteed network performance when you are working with the cloud. Just a side note here on moving data to the cloud. Like if I have a 40 terabytes database locally in my company, and I want to get that 40 terabytes database up to the cloud, am I going to use the network connection that I have to do? That's going to take like 2 months. More likely not, right? There is another service from Microsoft where specific to the cloud, that you can ship your hard drive, your media, let's say a hard drive in here. You can ship your hard drives, in this case, probably multiple, right? 440 terabytes. You ship it to Microsoft, and Microsoft will ship that thing to the data center. And at the data center, these things at the data center are so secured that they will get your media and they will copy the data to their media, doing threat analysis, to see if there is no Trojan horse in there or something like that. And then from their media, they will connect to the data center. It's a very secure thing happening. But the bottom line is, this can be done like in 3 days. You ship, it delivers, and they attach it, and then they tell you where the VHDs are with your data, right? So for one time high volume thing, you really don't have to use a network in either way, either public or Express Route. But for daily activities, you do want to do Express Route. All right, does that make sense? Everybody okay? No questions there? All right, thank you. Elena, So moving on. Just out of curiosity, I did a screenshot there for Express Route for you to take a look on the prices, and also to be aware when you work with the cloud, you have to be careful. You have to be smart about expenses, right? What's charged and what's not charged. So in this case here for Express Route, let's say I want to have 200 megabits per second connection to Microsoft. That would cost me $145 a month. Hey, hold on, $145 a month, but there is this other one here, $295 a month. Sorry, $295 a month. What's the difference? Well, the title here says the difference is premium add-on. There we go. These marketing names, premium add-on. What does that mean? That means, of course, if you go to the website, you're gonna see the documentation there. But that means this: when you sign up for Azure, and you create a service, you're gonna specify in what physical region around the world your service is. So I create an Azure SQL database, for instance. So this database is gonna be physically somewhere. Where do you want it to be? You want it to be in the East Coast, in the US East Coast, or in the US West Coast, or I'm from Brazil, so let's say you want your data down in Brazil for some reason, or in Europe someplace, some of the regions in there. The bottom line is there are I think a couple dozens, or close to 2 dozens of regions that Microsoft has deployed data centers there, and you can choose where your service will be hosted. And every time you upload data to a service in one region, and that for whatever reason that data has to travel to another region, you are charged extra. You are charged for data flowing from one region to another region, unless if you sign up for premium add-on. So the premium add-on here is you have free network traffic in between regions. So if I go here, for instance, online, whoops, here, there we go. If I go online here and look for Azure regions, Azure locations, Microsoft regions, Azure regions, this one will be probably, there we go. So here's a map where these regions are. So let's say if I create an Azure SQL database here in West US, and for some reason I have some application that's running on Central US, every time data flows in between these two regions, I'm charging extra. I will be charged extra, right? Because data is flowing in between regions. Data flowing in the same region, no extra cost, but in between region, you do have extra cost, right? So if you put your Express route here in California, like in West US, and you're uploading data to the East Coast, unless if you get the add-on, you're gonna be charged 2.5 cents per gigabytes if it's a zone near to each other, or if it has to travel between 2 zones, or in between 3 or more zones. So cost goes up. I have a client, actually a friend of mine, who was in Chicago and was trying these things. He created an Azure subscription, put the credit card in there. The thing was supposed to be, around $300 a month. It got to be about $1,000 a month, and was all on extra network traffic because he created the service when he was in Chicago, the database, and created the application when he was back here in California. And the application was created in the West Coast, while the database was created in the Central US. And then it has to pay for network traffic. So watch out for that. That's the difference between the regular price and the add-on. The other thing is, every time data comes out from Azure to anywhere else, you pay for egress. Is what they call egress. Every time anyone consumes data from your Azure services, besides software as a service, from your Azure service like SQL Server, so the data comes out from Azure network to anywhere else around the globe, you pay for egress. When you are in the Express route, same thing. You have to pay for data that's coming back. Like if you have, come on back here. come on, back here. If you have an application on-premise that is reading data from an Azure SQL database through express routes, you are paying for the data that's coming down from the cloud. It's coming this way. Data that's going this way, up to the cloud is in a subscription. But data that's coming down, you are paying extra if you are see outbound data, if you are on the regular meter data plan. There is another plan called Unlimited Data Plan, which pretty much the difference besides the price is that egress data through the express route is not charged. Egress data for the public internet is still charged, but through the express route for on-premise utilization is not charged. All right. So I see no questions there on the chat window. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the first demo here to show you the Azure Portal. So where do I go? Oh, well, I have this guy here. I put the VM for the demonstration up. Oh, what is it here? But it took forever to spin up. So I'm going to save this guy here for a second. I'll be back there in a second. So I'm going to go to Portal, the Azure Portal. This is the new logo. I like it a lot. And here is what they call the dashboard. The dashboard is fully customizable, but this demonstration is not about the portal itself. It's just about, see, Microsoft gave me $100 to do demonstrations, and I have used this account on a SQL Saturday last week or 2 weeks ago in Redmond, and I'm using the change that's still in there for this demonstration here. So here we are. See on this panel here, these are my favorites. Steve, let me know here. I'm gonna start Zoom. Let me see if Zoom is gonna work. Oh, not Zoom, Zoom Meet. Let me see if, oh boy, easy. Let me see if Zoom Meet will work well through Zoom. I think I never tried that. So Zoom Meet. Yep. Did the Zoom work well at your end? Is it zoomed? All right, perfect. If for whatever reason this link becomes messy, let me know, right? So see, this is the service that I marked as my favorite services. So I kind of have a shortcut for them in here. These are things I particularly work with these things all the time. But the actual collection of service that it's available is not here, right? The collection of service that's available, I can kind of have in a glance when I click here on create new resource. So this create new resource here can be a resource for any kind of resource. So these are the categories that are in there. So if I go here to database, for instance, these are the options that I have for database. Microsoft has classified as database services. If I go for computing, so I go in here and if I want to do a cloud service for cloud computing without interface. If I want SQL Server 2017, is the VM I just sped up. This is a VM, right? This is a VM offering, but there are more than that. That's the thing, sometimes they filter it even here. See, if you click here, see all, then you're really going to see all the computing options you have. And you see there are Unix virtual machines you can spin up. You can have Cisco devices there to spin up. You have virtual machines with particular configurations, like for Visual Studio for developers, and so far, so on, right? So if I need storage, if I need to upload data in there, these are my full list of storage services that I can use, including the Azure storage itself. You can have Data Lake and other providers out there. So that's how we do this, right? That's how we provision, sorry, the word escaped me, how we provision services. Now, for management purposes, important to keep that in mind. For management purposes, there is this thing called resource group. And in Azure, the resource group is not a service, it's just a way to organize the assets, the PaaS and the IaaS services you have deployed. It's great for billing, for instance, so you can see how much you're paying per resource group you have organized together. But it's also very important, and the main reason for it is for management. So if I create a resource group, like I think I have one here. Actually, I have two. See the Redmond resource group and the Malibu resource group. So let's say, you know, I have two admins here at my company, and I want one of the admins to take care of the things that are related to Redmond, and other admin to take care of things related to Malibu physical location. So I decide, it is my decision to organize these things by location, right? It could be by department, it could be by application, it could be by many criteria. You are free to choose what is going to be your criteria. The point in here is when I have a resource group, I will deploy services into my resource group, and I will control costs. See, I can see how much they are costing over here. I can see their metrics, you know, how much, you know, traffic is going on through these guys, and in this administrative blade here for the resource group. And I can also specify access control. And access control is when I delegate people the permission to manage Azure. And here's an important thing for you guys. Keep in mind, the resource group doesn't tell Azure that whoever can manage the resource group will also have access to the resources. Meaning, if someone is in here, if I go ahead and grant someone in here, I think it's just me right now, but if I go ahead and, you know, add somebody else in here to connect here, let's say you see this SQL Saturday here account. There is another account that's my one called arlacerda@hotmail.com. Don't email this one here because I don't read it. It's just for identification. Hotmail.com. Azure AD Group Services. Oh, what happened? Yeah, this is for my Azure application. Come on. Oh, sorry, this is the role. So let's say this guy's going to be a contributor and access to Azure AD user, and this probably the account. Let's see if it shows up. Yeah, there we go. So I get this guy here. So now I have two people that will be, if I click save here, there'll be two people that will be able to manage this resource group. And like if I need another VNet, if I need to create a VNet in here, any one of these guys will be able to come here and say, you know what, I need to add, sorry, bad click. I need to, let me go back to the, I think I clicked on Malibu, right? So if I go back in here, I can say, you know what, I need to add, any of these two accounts can go ahead and do add a new service. So if I need to have an Azure SQL database right now, I can go ahead and click in here. Any of those two guys can go ahead and click in here and deploy an Azure SQL database. It does not necessarily mean they will have access to the data in the database. It just means they are able to manage the services. It's almost like RDP to a server, and you can manage the server, but you cannot connect to SQL Server, right? You probably know, you have seen that before. So there you are. So let's say I want to deploy a VM. I already have a VM deployed over here. See the SQL US Malibu. This is a virtual machine. So we're gonna go over the process here just quick so you guys can see how it works. Let's say I need to create a VM and I want SQL already installed on that VM. So it's a virtual machine, and here's my virtual machine right there. I can just go ahead and click in here and see what are my virtual machine offerings. See, you can load more options. There are a bunch of options in here. Microsoft has this agreement with other companies where they create their own template, virtual machine templates, and they can offer the services in here. If I go long enough in this list here, I will see virtual machines. You see, with Ubuntu in this case, there are so many software vendors. See this one here, get Nutanix virtual machines on it, so you can work with these guys there with the software pre-installed. So it kind of saves you installation efforts. In my case here, I want to save that. I want a SQL Server 2017. So I filter a little bit further, and there you go. I've got SQL Server Web, I've got SQL Server Standard, SQL Server Enterprise running on the Windows Server 2016. So let's say I'm going to go ahead in here, and I'm going to choose the standard one. So a brief description of the service. So are you sure you want to go for that? And yeah, let's go for that.
Armando?
Yes.
I think one thing that you probably want to explain is you click specifically on BYOL, bring your own license. Maybe there is some difference there if you can transition or you can.
Let's go back. This one here, I clicked on, actually clicked on a regular one, but if you go around here, probably going this one, right? BYOL, this guy here. This is the one you're referring to, right, Steve? So
Right.
there is this one here, and there is this one here. The options are the same, standard Windows 2016, SQL Server 2017, but this one got this BYOL. What does that? What is that? That is good call, Stephen. By the way, that is called job assurance, right? If you don't know your acronyms, you're out of the game. So you gotta know your acronyms. And this one here is bring your own license, meaning this. Let me zoom out and get another tab in here. This is let me see, Azure pricing calculator, the price calculator from Azure. Do I have anything in here? I was playing with this thing for other things. So let me delete this guy. Okay, empty. So we are for virtual machines. So here's one virtual machine. So where's my virtual machine gonna run? Hey, keep in mind, some regions are cheaper than others, which means some regions are more expensive than others. So you wanna shop around, right? So let's say this is running here in California, in West US. It's running a Windows operating system and is not running anything else. Or I know, I wanna run a SQL Server on this guy. So is SQL Server Enterprise, and the tier here is about the VM itself. I'll be back in the tier in a bit. So look, because I have chosen to run SQL Server Enterprise, my virtual machine price is about $1,200 a month. If I say it's just the OS, the virtual machine is just $100 a month. So I'm paying about $1,100 a month on license for the SQL Server Enterprise. But if I already have SQL Server Enterprise, I have already bought the license for my company, and I want to move to the cloud, but I don't want to lose my license, I can go ahead, come here and say, you know what, I want just Windows in there. Or, you know, even if I have Windows license, I can also come here and say, I have my own license. And I don't have to choose here SQL Server, because I will, when I install SQL Server by myself, or by using the BYOL, the bring your own license option in there, they're gonna ask me for my license, they're gonna validate that, and we are good to go. So that's the Steven's call, very good one, is if you already have the license and you're going to decommission what is on premise, and you're going to redeploy your service up, your software, I rather say, up in the cloud has a VM, and this option is only for VMs, for infrastructure as a service. You can save money on the service. Another thing, since we're talking about that, Steve, another thing I want to call your attention to is this price here is for production computers, right? It's for production. And by the way, you see this D1 here is a very low level virtual machine. It's just one core. So if you go back here, you're gonna see the types of virtual machines. And you know, this is another discussion that can take a long time. There are virtual machines here. They're optimized for memory. Some are optimized for I/O. Some are not optimized just to run, you know, the low grade price tier. But like for SQL Server, they usually request you to start on this one here. So this particular virtual machine by itself is this price, see, 827. So yeah, so another thing I want to call your attention to is we usually have production environment and Q&E environment and dev environment. So this virtual machine here would be, let's say, for production environment. So it means I have to multiply this by 2. Like if I go, you know, I'm not bringing my license, I'm using a new license that I need to acquire. It doesn't mean I'm going to pay $3,000 a month, not just to run, but I have to multiply this by 2 because I have my dev people that also needs to work with this thing. And here's the thing, there is this option here called, see, dev test pricing. Sometimes it's called dev labs, but you know, dev test pricing. The point here is if you're going to deploy infrastructure as a service, VMs, Microsoft will not charge you for software license as long as the VM is not used in production, right? And they kind of keep an eye on this. So look at the price, right? So if I say, you know, I want to deploy this virtual machine here, but it's for my dev team to use, so I can go ahead and click in here, and it's going to recalculate the thing, and the price went down even lower than it was. You see, it's the same virtual machine level, D13 8 core, even lower than it was just for the Windows operating system, because the Windows licenses is also removed from here. This is actually the price of running a virtual machine on a CentOS, you know, Linux operating system, which is free. So you know, to support your dev, test, QA things, Microsoft has this approach of not charging you for software license, you know, just for the computing power up in the cloud, which is a great thing. You know, you can save a lot of money. I have been to some clients, and my clients, they're like, "Oh, I'm paying so much money times 3." I say, "Why are you doing times 3, man? I got dev and QA and production." Say, "Oh no, you should know about this. Let me show you this." And they are happy, and they give me, you know, they pay my lunch and things like that. All right.
Armando, there is a question about what's free version of Ubuntu. The question comes from Sri.
What is free? Let me see. Can we verify that you choose the SQL Server option for the type? Yes. I have just shown that.
Yes.
Right?
The one above.
The one above. What is the free version for Ubuntu? Yeah, you know, it's not much my area, but let's see. I think we can see it from here. So Ubuntu, I think, like this. Let's take a look. So Ubuntu Server 16.04, LTS 17.10, and off you go. Have I answered your question? Snee, right? Yeah. Go back under the SQL. Go back, it's under the SQL Server. Okay, so go back. Virtual Machine SQL Server 2017. That should mean. So this might bring out this one here under. That's going to be kind of hard to cut the same thing again. Yeah, but you know, you can, if you search for the Ubuntu and you click on the option for the Ubuntu there, you get all the details. Let me go back in here, Ubuntu. Let me go back here and here. And there is a description you see over here about what you're gonna find in the virtual machine. So you may answer, you know, get the details for your question over here. And say, I see free SQL. Okay, you see free SQL. Free SQL is good. Let's take a look here. Virtual Machine SQL Server 2017. And oh, look at that. We're here for an hour already. I'm not even in the middle of my presentation. So where is free? Free SQL Server 2017. Express. That's why it's free. Express is free, right? We all know that SQL Server Express, which is a very limited edition of SQL Server, is free, right? So SQL Server is free, not the VM or the Windows in it. All right, so far so good. Let me go. Yeah, so this is the virtual machine I have created for this demonstration. So I need to do some stuff in there. See, the virtual machine is already spinning. I have already created a virtual machine. It was some somewhat active a couple minutes ago, half an hour ago, because I just spinned it up. And let me go ahead and connect to it. So you see there is this option here to create a dynamic name on this DNS for Microsoft. So I can go ahead in here and do an RDP. And the RDP shows up in here in the other monitor. Let me get it to this monitor here. So Malibu dot west us to cloud app azure.com. And I did type something wrong because I'm a horrible typist. So Control C, Control V.
How is your handwriting?
Control C. I should be someone told me I should be a doctor, not a IT guy. Okay, that looks better. Yay. So authentication here, I did create an admin account for this thing. So more choices. And the choices here is super DBA, it's my account. And the password is this awesome password that you guys cannot see. Let's go ahead and connect. Yep, connecting there. And it did show up in the other window. So let me drag this thing over here. And there we are. Or we should be. Oh, there it is. So I speed up this thinking here, and I have, this is the first time I'm logging into it, so they want it to be seen on the VNet is connected to. So let me see, SSMS. Yeah, it's there, perfect. And let me go ahead also and do some housekeeping here just quick. I, by the way, did get a 16 CPU virtual machine, but even that sometimes a little slow when you first bring it up. So let me turn this off so I don't get that annoying thing on Internet Explorer. And I do need to download a file here from another Azure subscription, just quick. So let's go to portal.azure. What I'm doing here, I'm doing something I should have done before the presentation, so I apologize for that. And what I'm doing here is downloading the demo database I want to do. So portal.azure.com. The virtual machine took forever to spin up. There was something going on with this subscription. I think it doesn't have much priority because it's free. So let me get that Hotmail account I mentioned. There I don't read emails from it. It's just for ID. And here, the password is different. Nope. I'm gonna go. This virtual machine is gonna go away momentarily. And there is this database that is free there. You all know Stack Overflow, right? And the Stack Overflow, they offer their database for free, so you can have something with kind of volume when you want to do demonstrations. I learned that from Bentos, and I've been using this thing forever after I have learned that. So Stack Overflow. Oh, this is the database. No, you see, this is Azure SQL database. This is not the one that I want. I want the actual backpack file. Where is it? It was right here. There you go. Stack Overflow. Let me just download this file here, just quick, guys. So it's in my blob storage, and in this container, this is my file, 17 gig. This is gonna, once I restore it, this is gonna go to about 100 gigabytes. So you can see some volume going on. Download this. Save to Let me see the disks where I have space for this. Save to 51 gigs, 17 gigs. Yeah, it fits on drive D. So let's go ahead to this computer, drive D, save. All right, sorry about that. So see, this is the virtual machine running Azure. This infrastructure has a service, as we have discussed. And because I have chosen that template with SQL Server installed on it, my SQL Server is already here. SQL Malibu, SQL US, SQL User Group, Malibu, and here's my database. There was my server that was just installed. No database in there. There will be a database here momentarily when it finishes downloading from the other subscription. One thing to call out in here is, again, because I have chosen the SQL Server template, I got 2 disks for my my database. One to keep the data, one to keep, actually just 1 disk, I rather say, just 1 disk to keep the data. And here is my, there is a folder for the data, tempdb is there, and there is a folder for the log, tempdb in there. Hey, Armando, shouldn't data and log be put apart? And tempdb is also here. Shouldn't tempdb should have its own disk? That's the next topic we're going to discuss. But yeah, it's, the template is kind of just a raw start, and you're going to work with your disks when you finish doing the VM deployment. All right. One thing to keep in mind that's very important is this D drive here. Of course, the C drive is the operating system itself. You should not do anything on this guy, on the C drive. You can expand it if you need. It comes out of the template with 126 gigabytes, which is more than enough for running SQL Server. In case you need to expand this thing, you can. You have to go back to the portal, and I'm gonna demonstrate that to you in a bit in the next demonstration. So again, keep away from copying things or using C drive for anything that's not OS related. And create your disks as you need, right, for your databases, but never use the D drive unless if it's for tempdb. Why is that? This D drive here is the only drive that's actually maps to a physical hard drive at the data center, and it's an SSD drive, so it's really fast. This drive here is really fast. And people notice that, and they start creating the databases in here. But here's the catch, very dangerous. Alerts, bam, bam, red alert. If you shut down your virtual machine, if you go to the portal here and you say stop, I should say stop, I should not say shut down, but if you come here and say stop, meaning you're removing the virtual machine from a rack, and you're keeping just the hard drive, so when you need it back up, it will start up again. But you're removing like dynamic IP addresses. My IP address is this one here at the moment. And if I stop this virtual machine, and because this is dynamic, you see, if I stop this virtual machine and get it back up, this IP address will change. So if I want a static IP address, I can. But the point is, when I stop the virtual machine, this D drive here will be deallocated. And when I start the virtual machine again, this D drive will be a new D drive. It's never going to be the same. So whatever I have saved on the D drive is lost forever. No chance to recover, right? It's just lost forever. So you don't want to keep in this D drive any data that you need to persist in between, restore, not reboots, but in between getting the virtual machine down and get the virtual machine back up again. Also, if for any reason there is a crash on the physical server hosting your virtual machine, Microsoft will, the Azure cloud will restart that server somewhere else. So it will be like a blimp, right? It's going to be offline for a couple minutes, and it will start somewhere else. And because there is no live movement of the virtual machine, it's just a new reboot of the virtual machine, the D drive will also be gone. The data in the D drive will also be gone, right? So watch out, don't create any database that's in here, any database in here, unless the TempDB. TempDB is a great candidate to be here, but you have no management on the size. You cannot expand this D drive. You cannot do anything about this D drive, right? You cannot manage this. So yeah, just to get the your feet wet with looking into the virtual machine and looking to the virtual machine and the infrastructure behind the virtual machine. Back in here, like I said, this is for management, right? The portal is for management. So if I go to my, this is the virtual machine. So if I go here, for instance, the disks, I can see the disks that are being allocated to my virtual machine. So there is an OS disk, the drive C, and there is here the data disk. That data disk with 1 terabyte we have seen there that's waiting for the database. So if I need to add more disks, like I want to put apart data and the log, so I need to add an extra disk. So I would go ahead here and click on this button. But I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. Let me go back to the PowerPoint slides here and make sure we are okay with the ecosystem before I move on into virtual hard drives. Before I go for more questions, in case there are any, let me go back in here. Let me do another deployment, but this time around, I want to do a deployment for PaaS and get this thing rolling as we browse a couple more slides. So back here into the Malibu resource group, I want to deploy here a PaaS. So it's not going to be a virtual machine, it's going to be PaaS, and this is it. See, Azure SQL Database. So I want to deploy an Azure SQL Database and say this guy here is a PaaS service, and you're not going to have a virtual machine or anything like that. It's just SQL Server running there. So let's see how it looks like, how different it is. So this database name here is going to be SQL User Group Malibu. So the name is okay, right? There is no other database like that in the cloud. Actually, this name here is not checked in the cloud, but the server name will be. Subscription Azure PaaS, existing user group Malibu, that's it. Let's say I want to get some data in there. AdventureWorks LT will be there. You see, I could restore from a backup of another database I could have, and then I would point to the database backup I would have from another one. So like if I have a copy of the production database for development or for tests, I can go ahead and create a new database from a backup that is in the system. We're going to get more details about that in a second. And here's my server. And when I go to the server is where the money lies. It's where they're gonna choose my bill, the size of my bill. So again, this is gonna be SQL Malibu server, just to make the name different. Server, SQL Malibu server, and this is the rest of the public internet domain name. This name can change, right? I can go ahead later and create the name with my company's DNS and create the appropriate records to get it redirected. I'm gonna call here the admin guy super DBA again, and my awesome password. And let's say, oops, no. Awesome. Oh, this password's so great. There you go. Good typing, yay, finally. And where it lives, right? Again, West US is perfect place. And again, you have the list of regions in here. You can go back and forth where you want to have this. West US is where I want to have it. So good, select. And down here is my price tier. So what kind of processing do I want to have for this guy? I'm going to go into the details about that later. And, I'm going to keep it like this. It is, how much did you use here? Can't read. 50. Okay, 50 DTUs right there. And it's a maximum size of 250 gigabytes of data. So apply that. And I think we should be good to go. Great. So we see no VM, no OS charges, no nothing. It's just the price tier I want to use. How much I'm paying for this? Well, if I go here and go to Azure SQL Database add it to my cart in here. This is the virtual machine. I don't need anymore. And if I go down here, where is it? Azure. Your estimate for Azure SQL database. So that was West US. Oops. Come on. East. And we are on West US 2, I think. There was a simple database, and there was a standard S250 DTUs. So this is the price per month of that database. Now, there are so many details in here. I don't have time to go through of them, but you have to look into the details, all right? The devil lies in between, in the details, between the lines there. Now, for the virtual machine, if I go here to the virtual machine, where is the virtual machine? Here. If I go here into the virtual machine, is this my correct account? Yes. So all resources and actually resource group and Malibu and the virtual machine that will show up in here is my virtual machine. I would be paying like $600, as you have seen, a little less than $600 if I keep the virtual machine running all month long. If I go here and stop the virtual machine, they stop charging me. So it's on demand, right? As long as the virtual machine is running, they charge me for the computing time the virtual machine is running. Even if the virtual machine is doing nothing, but is running, they're charging me. Now on SQL Server, when I deploy SQL Server like this, this is a fixed bill. It's going to be this price. Even if you don't use SQL Server, you don't have, for SQL Server, Azure SQL Database, you don't have an option to pause or stop it. It's all or nothing, right? That's going to be your bill for the month. For other database options like Azure SQL Data Warehouse, you can actually pause the service and then you're charged by the hour. But in this case here is a fixed price for the month. There is no up or down. That's your predictable bill, right? So with that in mind, any questions? What are your questions?
Yes, there is a question in the chat.
Question in the chat, thank you. Who all can connect to this database? We just need the IP address and login. Yes, because that's true. And the reason that's true is because, where is my browser again? Here. Yeah. So the reason for that is that my virtual machine, this is the virtual machine. My virtual machine here in the networking, I have connected it to the public internet. See, there is a public internet here. I do have a private internet, a private IP address, because this virtual machine is on a VNet. And therefore, there's always a private IP address, and the gateway is doing the NAT service, right, to get the public packages rerouted to the private IP address. So I do have a public IP and I have a private IP, and my network rules in here are both filtering, doing the firewall thing, and also redirecting the protocols. Now, if this was supposed to be a private deployment, like people from the internet were not supposed to connect in here, I can go ahead and see Detach network interfaces, which in this case would be the public one. Say I don't want to have this, so I can go ahead and here is disassociate this guy. I don't want to have a public IP address, and I would connect it only to the private IP address. Now, if I do this, I'm disconnecting my virtual machine forever from me until I put a public IP again, because I do not have a gateway in between my local network here home and that VNet up in the cloud. I would have to set up a gateway and probably a site-to-site gateway from my network on premise and this VNet here up in the cloud. So long story short, it's available for anybody in the internet, even to you, Sri, because by default, it has associated an IP address. If I don't want that, if I want to be private only, I first must make sure I have a VNet connection, VPN connection, rather say, in between my on-premise and the Azure VNet that my virtual machine is running on. And then I can come in here and disassociate the public IP address. Does that make sense? 3? All right, great, good question. Okay, so my time, if it was a really supposed to be a 1 hour session, my time is up in 15 minutes. So let me go ahead here and just browse a little bit more on the hard drives, and then we go more into the details of the SQL database. Hopefully be, I think I should speed up a little bit, but we'll see. So when it comes to virtual hard drives, VHDs, you know, behind these things is Hyper-V. So we know there is a VHD someplace, right? When virtual machines were first deployed, the virtual hard drives, they are used to be stored, and actually they can still be stored on storage accounts. So if I go back here to my portal and go to my resource group, here Malibu, I do have here a storage account. See, there is a storage account that was created when I first created the resources. And if I go in here, I will see that I have 4 options for storage in here. One of them is to, actually 2 of them, these 2 guys are to store files. But this one here is the one that's mostly used to store files because of visibility, can be accessed from anywhere. And as you can see here, I do have a file in this storage account in here. I do have a file that is, in this particular case, is used for diagnostics. You know, has Azure monitors my virtual machine and everything I put in here. It will save diagnostic information in here. So it's not me, it's Azure that created this by itself. But if I have a virtual hard drive on my computer, for instance, and I want to have that VM on that virtual hard drive up in Azure, I would come in here and I would upload. And where is the upload? There's supposed to be an upload icon here someplace. Which for, oh, this is my container. I'm at container level. There we go. So this is my container. These are 2 log files on this container. And there you go. If I click here on upload, I could go ahead and choose a VHD file in case I had one in there, and upload that VHD file up to Azure. And the VHD file would land here in the blob storage. So both in the past and nowadays, we do this if I want to upload a VHD and run, you know, have access to that hard drive from my virtual machine. But lately, you know, for a few months already, we have this thing called managed disks. And it's very important to understand the difference between traditional approach and managed disks, mostly for this. See, managed disks are almost 3 times faster than VHD drives there are in a regular blob storage. So if you need performance, you know, better performance, you want to create managed disks to your virtual machines running SQL, not just leaving the VHD in the blob storage. So it goes like this. You know, I go back here to my virtual machine. Let me close this blade. Close this blade. Here is my storage accounts. No, it's not here. Close this blade. And now I'm in the resource group, and this is my virtual machine again, right here. So on the disks, when I click here on the disks, I can see the disks that I have, and I can add disks. In this case here, I need to create a new disk. And I can choose no name for the disk, my new disk. And this disk I'm being creating here is a managed disk. See, run as an SSD. I could have it created empty, or from a VHD, I have already uploaded to storage. So like I said, if I have my data file on a VHD on premise, I upload that to the storage, and then I come here to manage disk and create a managed disk based on the VHD I would have in the storage. And because I'm doing managed disk, this would run at the 200 megabit per second throughput performance. If I was going to create this disk outside the VM management, like again, I go back to my resource group and say, I'm going to add something new here, and I'm going to add a disk. See, I have two options, classic and managed. Classic creates the disk in the storage, and it lives there, and my VM would have to connect to that disk and will be limited to 60 megabits per second. So currently, and nowadays, the way you should do for your SQL Server better performance is always create a managed disk, even if the VHD is in the blob. So if it's in the blob, convert it to a managed disk and go from there. All right? Very, very important information about managing your storage in Azure. So back in here, virtual machines is the idea of lift and shift. Keep in mind, if you have like a 16 CPU VM on premise and 50, let's say 64 gigabytes RAM on premise, and you move this thing to the cloud and you go there and create a VM that's exactly the same specs, 16 CPUs and 64 gigabytes of data, make sure you understand that it's not going to have the same performance as it was on premise. Not because the VM is running in Azure per se, but because the disk IOs are throttled, right? They are controlled. There is a ceiling on the hard drive throughput. Sorry, the hard drive throughput. So on premise, perhaps you have like 1 gigabit connection in your SAN storage and the computer running SQL Server. So perhaps you're running 1 gigabit. You will never get that. I mean, there are ways to get that. You're gonna pay extra, you're gonna pay premium, but there are ways to get that up in the cloud. But for the regular offering, you're not gonna get that. You're not going to get that throughput, unless if you are, if you can design a good file group and file group strategy. So like if I create 3 files, database files, or let's say 5 database files, and I put the data on these 5 files, right? I create a file group covering these 5 files, and I create a table to do a round robin between these 5 files. When I do like a full table scan on a table that big, I will get the 5 files working together simultaneously in parallel. So my combined throughput will be 1 gigabyte. So you see, you have to design for that. You have to use the file group strategy in SQL Server if you need to achieve that kind of performance, or pay premium to get specific or special storage at the clouds. Microsoft does offer that as well. Does that make sense? We good? There is a silence there, so hopefully, yeah, there we go. Sri, thank you. All right, so we've been through this, and another thing to keep in mind is how is going to be your backup and restore strategy. Remember, we are in infrastructure as a service, right? So your backup and restore strategy are very important here, because you are in charge of the virtual machine. So you have to do your backup by yourself. So if I go back here into the virtual machine, which is right here, right? I'm going to create a database. The things are still downloading there. So I'm going to create a database here just quick. Let's see, new database, my sample DB. And if I go here and go for backup, let me see here. Disappear from me. Backup, where are you? Here, backup. So if I go here for backup, I have an option to backup to disk. And of course, this disk here, whatever disk I choose, is already in the cloud. And one thing to learn about disks in the cloud is every disk you create has 3 copies of it. So, you know, you always have 3 copies of it, always, for a high availability purpose. So, and by default, these 3 copies are in the same region where the VM is running, probably on the same data center. Not in the same rack, I think, but in the same data center. You can ask SQL Server to create a copy, not SQL Server, I'm sorry. You can ask Azure to create all the 3 copies of this server, of this disks. I'm sorry, I'm getting tired. Let me start again, start over. 3 copies on the same region. You can ask Azure to have all the 3 copies, total 6, of this unique drive, this only one drive, in another region. Like in case an earthquake happens here in the East Coast, I want to have a copy of this data in central region or east region, or even overseas somewhere, so I can have a live copy, a hot copy of this data somewhere else. That degrades performance as well, because there, you know, the log shipping will work on this thing, but that's possible too, right? So when you think about backup, you have to consider, you know, the frequency of backup you want to do, because there is a lot of copies already of this database. And considering you are going to take backup of this database on a particular schedule, you can choose to backup to URL. On-premise, you can also do that on-premise if you have not noticed that yet. Backup to URL. And when you do backup to URL, you choose the place in here where you want to back up to. So like I created this account for this demonstration, right? So let's say I want to back up this thing. I think I have to minimize here. I want to back up this thing to that storage account that is in there. So let me go here, resource groups and Malibu. And let's say here, this is my resource in there. Let's say I want to create a new storage. A new storage place, not a data lake, it's just storage account, this guy here. I want to create a new storage to store my backups, you know, just to keep it apart, and perhaps have somebody else managing this. So my SQL backups, for instance, someone has that name already. Look at that, ABC. Hey, there we go. So this is my storage place, and there are some options here about the storage. I'm gonna keep it quiet to save time, but you know, you can research on that one later. And storage in Azure is really cheap. I mean, it's indecent. It's so cheap that's like, oh, you gotta be kidding me. You can keep like terabytes of data for a couple $100. So it's cheap, it's really cheap. So I'm gonna create this guy here, and this should be done pretty quick. This operation usually doesn't take long. Deployment's in progress, all right. Close this guy here, close this guy here. Let's do a refresh here pretty quick. Come on, don't make me a liar. Deployment succeed, that was the previous one. Okay, so just because I said it was quick, it's gonna take forever now. But the point here is, once you create your storage place, you're gonna have these options. And you know, you could go here to the blob one, where it's usually, like I said, the most common one to be used. You can use files, but the thing with the files is it only works for things on, oh, there you go. I thought it would be quick. The thing with the files, what happened? Close this, resource groups, Malibu, and oh, it's my storage here, this guy. The thing with the files is you can access it through UNC, but only resources in the same subscription can use this guy. You cannot share with anybody outside your subscription. And blobs you can, so that's why people usually use blobs. So it's up to you to define which one you want to use. So here's my backups for demos, for instance. So when I create this guy here, you see the URL over here, primary blob service endpoint. I can go ahead and go back to my virtual machine and add this guy here, paste. So when I take a backup of my SQL Server database, it would go to this blob, and I want it to go to this container, right? And if I want to, you know, if in case I want to create a folder or something, I could too. So this is my container, and this is where it's supposed to go, like this. For this to work, I must create a signature, a SaaS signature. So if I go up here, back to the blob, if I go here to the blob definition, where are you? Here. You see this guy here, the shared access signature? This defines who, you see, unlike in TFS, I do not define this thing per person, per account. It's a key with permissions. So like I'm gonna create a key here that's gonna be good until next year. And until next year, and it's kind of a, you know, honor, and I can do anything on the blob storage itself. When I get this SaaS, see my SaaS token, it's right here. So I can get this guy from here over here. And it should be good to go. Let's see if it goes through. Something failed. What happened? Cannot open backup device because my sample database backup, I think it's missing a slash somewhere. So let's go to this guy again, URL. Oh, cancel, remove, add. One more try, right? So back to the SaaS over here. Oh boy. So let me get this one. Let's see if it works. So the point here is, you know, with the key and assign it into SQL Server, I would be able to take a backup to a storage. And when I do this backup to the storage, the data on that storage is not mixed up with the same locations where the data of my database is. So you should consider in your backup strategies, you should be considering your backup strategies doing this backup to the cloud. And even if you are running on premise, that should also be considered as an option for you, right? So once again, oh, that's the wrong storage. I'm gonna give you one more try to see if I can get it to work. So what is my storage? Resources, Malibu, and this is my storage in here. Storage, ABC. What is my ABC? Here, ABC, and my blob within the blob. And again, this is not an NTFS. Actually, this is not a file service, right? So there is no permissions for individual files or folders. It's just a blob, and the blob has a container. This is my container over here. And backups for demos, yeah. So I need the URL for my blob and blob. And the URL for my blob is here. This is my URL. Paste that over here. And within the blob, we have containers. So this is my container right here. So let me get this container. Is it a folder? Not really, right? It's just a place. It looks like a folder, behaves like a folder, but not actually a folder. It's just a container element for Azure. And I think what I missed was just this backslash here, hopefully. And now I need that SaaS key again. So let's go back there, and I kept the SaaS key over here. By the way, Azure does not keep track of these SaaS keys. If you lose it, it's lost. You have to create a new one. Usually there's not a big impact on anything, but you know, just to make sure you know that. Let's see if it goes through now. All right. Yeah, I'm missing something. And I'm not going to waste time debugging this, but that's how it would be done. All right. Questions before I move along? I think this is the last one. Virtual machines and backups. That was my demo. Any questions you'd like to ask? Questions? Would you have 3 drivers created in your dev test environment? Would you have 3 drives created? I mean, it's not about dev test, right? It's about the performance you want to get, Elena. Is the performance you want to get. You want to add more devices. Usually, when you want to do parallel readings to upgrade your performance through parallelism. All right, I can go to a disk and expand the disk. Like if I need more space, I need to add a new disk. I can just expand the disk I already have. So this disk can be expanded as you need. But when you expand the disk, you're not getting better performance because it's the same throughput, it's the same channel. If you really want to get more throughput, more performance, then you create multiple drives and use the file group strategy to take advantage of a parallelism. All right. 3, the difference in price between create disk and the regular disk and managed disk. It's really not that big. Managed disks, Azure price. I don't keep this thing on top of my mind, but you see, anytime you need to look for pricing, you can go to the calculator, right? You Google like this, and you get there. So disk size, you see, like 32 gigabits, 64 gigabits. So let's say you get 1 terabyte. This is what you pay for a 1 terabyte. And there is some IOPS in there, the bandwidth, right? The included IOPS, the included throughput for that disk. So if you go too much above that throughput, which is really high, then you start getting some extra, and the extra goes down here. There are some details down here you can check. So there you go, 1 terabyte disk up in the cloud, 122 a month for managed, right? So this is for managed. So let's say here, Azure blob storage price. And here's when things will become a little bit more convoluted, because the storage price gets a lot of things in, a lot of factors. But like you see the first 50 terabytes month on a hot one, let's say you're using it all the time, right? Is this one almost 2 cents per gigabyte. All right, on the first one. So if I have, what is it here? 1 terabyte of data, 0.0184 times gigabyte, right? So 124 is terabyte, $18 on the lower performance 60 megabits per second performance, right? So if price and performance balance either way, you can go either direction, right? Either the regular, classic, or managed disk. There we go. That was an easy calculation. All right, there are more questions in here. Difference in price. Okay, Elena. So it's about performance, not availability. Exactly. Availability, it's guaranteed by the infrastructure, Elena. So when you create 1 virtual disk, there are 3 copies of this virtual disk in the physical infrastructure over there. You don't have to create like availability groups yourself, right, on Azure VMs. These are behind the scenes there for you. You don't have to do that. So you create multiple disks to benefit from parallelism in the throughput for these disks. So that's the answer there is yes. 3, so to build up this environment, you create the groups, storage, network, and then add the servers and customize them. Yeah, around that. This is being recorded, so we can go back in here and double check it again. And there are a lot of literature about that for free. right, on the cloud too. So at least you know the main guidelines, right, Sri? What else? So let's wrap this up with the Azure SQL database. We go back here, close this. Yeah, I'm gonna skip this one here. This was this is just to, like, if you have a very high volume database and you want to take a backup of this database, there is this thing called file snapshot. It's not a snapshot per se, but this is something very specific called a SQL Server called file snapshot. When your data files are not in managed disks, but the data files are in regular VHD blob storage containers, and you know, the performance of backup of this thing, because there is shadow copy of these things, it is ridiculous. You know, you can take a backup of like 100 gigabytes backup in less than 5 minutes. So it's ridiculous. But I'll leave that for you to research later, right, on this guy. So let's wrap up the night with this guy here, right, the Azure SQL database. And again, when I'm stepping into Azure SQL database, I'm stepping away from infrastructure as a service, but step into platform as a service, right? So I have already left one there being created for us. So we're gonna take a look at how that looks like now. Let me see here. There's something else. Try if you can share the slides and videos. It will be great. Hey, Steve, that's with you, right? You're gonna give the YouTube link later. Is that right?
Exactly. Yes.
All right. So it's a PaaS offering, right? So when it's PaaS, all of this hour and a half talk about VHDs, managed disk throughput, gone. Forget about it. Because you're not managing infrastructure, right? PaaS is platform. Somebody else is managing the infrastructure for you. You really don't care about the infrastructure, right? You care about the logical elements of your database. One important thing to keep in mind here is this performance is defined by DTUs. And DTU is an acronym for Data Transfer Unit, I think. Azure SQL DTU. What is DTU? DTU is data, is it transfer transaction? It's something like that. Did not bring up right away on top of me, right in front. Yeah, don't see it there. It's either transaction or transfer. Let's see. Data. Nope. DTU. It doesn't say. Anyways, DTU. Huh?
Database throughput units.
Throughput. There you go. Neither of my guesses. Neither one of them. Thank you. So what is this data throughput? Because it doesn't exist on premise, right? It's something they have made up for Azure Platform as a Service. So this page here gives a brief explanation about what it's about, and it's pretty much a calculation based on this performance counters in Windows, right? You know, processor utilization, logical disk utilization, and the throughput of data coming from the database, including transaction logs and TempDB per database. So it's a calculation based on this one here. I should have this link here in the slide, but I don't. I forgot to add it there, so I'm gonna paste it here on the chat window. If you want to find out how many DTUs you would need to support a particular database on your on-premise, right, and you want to move that database to the cloud, you can download the template, either the command line or the PowerShell script to collect this information here from your server from a period of time that you come to define, like for a day, 2 days, a week. And then you specify here how many cores your computer has, and you upload the collected file, and it will give you an analysis, kind of a graphic analysis of performance and how many DTUs you should allocate for your PaaS. It's a rough estimate. It's not guaranteed it's going to be that. Peaks are disconsidered on this calculation, right? They don't deviate the line, kind of outlier thing. But it gives you a very good idea on which DTU to get started with, right? And I have used this one here a lot, and it really helps me. Usually at the first start, we don't have much performance issues. And Azure SQL DB pricing, again, get to the calculator. What is it? Pricing calculator, Azure SQL Service. No, what is it? Pricing, there we go. So here we go. And these are the pricing lists. See the DTUs, but it's for the last pool. A single database. I'll be in the last pool in a second. So these are the price tiers, right, for standard and premium. And the difference between standard and premium goes along with more performance. And I think the SLA is the same, I believe. But the premium gets more storage capability for up to 4 terabytes. So the standard goes on to 1 gigabyte. And that's the max storage, and the DTU can go higher. See, 4,000 DTUs, and here it sticks in the 3,000 DTU. So, but what SQL Server version I'm running? Is it 2008? Is it 2010? Is it, oh, there is no 2010. Is it 2012? Is it 2008, 2012, or 2014, or 20? Which one is it? I don't care. They keep this thing. They keep this thing updated for me. But Armando, I should care because when I create a database, there is this compatibility level when I do on-premise, right? So if I'm going to create something in Azure, I should worry about the compatibility level, right? And the answer is not really. They really expect you to be compatible with the latest versions of SQL Server. So when I go here, if I do SQL again, Azure SQL Database, I'm not going to create it just to show you the option. When I go in here, they will ask me, where does it go? It's the server, I think. Create a new one. Well, look at that. Even the option went away. It's been a while. I don't pay attention to this thing anymore, but it seems it went away. Yeah, it went away. There was an option here for a classic one in the V12, and I think the classic one has been retired, so you cannot even see it anymore. It used to be here. So they really expect you to be in the latest version. Look at that, just notice it now, because I don't use the other one. I just noticed now you cannot really choose the version, you see? They just expect you to be compatible with the latest one. And this thing about compatibility with the latest one is also important to keep in mind, that the Azure SQL Database Platform as a Service, like we're doing here, is not 100% compatible with Azure, with on-premise SQL Server 2017 or 2016. There are things that don't work. For instance, no inter-database dependencies. Like some people do a cross-database query. I am on my test database. I'm on let's say accounting database, and I do select star from hr.dbo.some table on another database. This is a cross-database query, right? This is not supported in the clouds. You cannot do cross-database queries, right, in Azure SQL DB. There is no linked server on Azure SQL DB. There is something else called Polybase that can help you with that, but linked server is not there, right? So there are a lot of things that are like related to infrastructure that are not supported in Azure SQL Database. For a comprehensive list, go to docs.microsoft.com, and you see the pages in there that can tell you that. There is no file management, like I said, but very important also is the authentication is different. By default, all Azure SQL databases, they are self-contained, meaning the account exists for the database and not for the server. There are, let me show you here. There are, is my SQL database deployed? Yeah, SQL Server right here. So there are some accounts that should be considered administrative accounts that can be configured at the server level. See, server admin, super DBA is the guy who created the database, if you can recall that. I could add my Azure Active Directory as an administrator here. So I can go ahead and like choose my arlacerda@hotmail.com, for instance. And it didn't show up because I mistyped it, hotmail.com. There we go. So I can assign myself as a server level DBA. So any database, or server level administrator, right? So any database in this particular server I would have access to. But the users for each one of these databases should not ever be created at the server level. It's always at the database level. And for that, I need to use Management Studio. So I go here to Management Studio. I'm going to connect to a database engine. And my URL for this server is... where is it? I'm sorry. Click on this guy here. My database. Here's my database. And the server is here, right here. So click this guy here for the server. And let's go here and paste the server name in here. Here, see, I'm doing Windows authentication here, but this account doesn't exist there. It's not even a Azure Active Directory. So Windows authentication will pretty much not work unless if this virtual machine belongs to a domain that syncs to Active Directory. Otherwise, Windows authentication will never work. So I would have to use Active Directory authentication based on password or multi-factor authentication, or use SQL authentication, right? Either one of them. Let's go for the SQL authentication. And super DBA is my account, and that awesome password is also my password here. So someone asked me that already, right? Is this thing in the public internet? And the answer is yes, unless if I do a VNet configuration, like I said, to do it on premise. But by default, the firewall blocks anybody to get there. So if you try from your location right now, you see you're not going to be able to connect. But if I go from here, because I am on the virtual machine, let me double check that. I was expecting to complain. Let me double check that this thing is really blocked. So if I go here on the server, there is a firewall option over here someplace. Here, firewall, virtual networks. And the firewall here says, I see. The firewall here says that nobody can do that. So nobody can connect from the public internet. But I did say here, see, allow access to Azure services. See over here, allow access to Azure service. And because my VM is running Azure, therefore it's an Azure service, the firewall allowed it through, right? To make sure you get that clearly, I'm going to start SS Management Studio from my local machine. Where's my mouse? Here. From my local machine, SSMS. From my local machine here, and hopefully it will not take long to spin up. Let's see, it's in the other window here, so you guys can see. There you go, now you can. So Management Studio is coming. And now don't recover anything. So let's go ahead and connect. And let's use that URL over there, and SQL authentication, and super DBA, and my awesome password. And connect. So here, oh, there you go. See, firewall rule. Hey, you cannot get in here. But if you have the server administrator account, you know, the Azure Active Directory account that manages this, you can go and authorize yourself. So because I used, oh boy, the account I used there was SQL 698, I think. My throat's getting dry. At outlook.com. No, was not it. Look at that. Oh boy. Sorry about that. Let me get in here. SQL Saturday. SQL Saturday 698. So SQL Saturday 698. Hey, you already like this? Are you sure you want to switch? I would say switch here, and then I would be able to allow myself, right, through the firewall. So let's do the magic. What's the password? The password is not the awesome password. This is another password here. Go for it, and I get authenticated. Then I can authorize myself and do the firewall thing from here. And of course, right, because I had it over here already, I could do the firewall from here as well, and specify which IP addresses would be allowed to connect to my SQL Server, right? So back in here, actually to the virtual machine that's already connected. So you see, when you connect to Azure SQL Database Platform as a service, you don't have the same options like you have on premise because you don't manage the infrastructure. It's very limited, by the way. What you have here is just the databases you have, and here's my database. And if I need to authorize people into this database, I have to come in here into security and add users to this database. And even Management Studio has less features in here. Like if I go here, add a new user, if it was on premise, I would have a dialog box to fill up some fields and get the user there. But here, what I get is a script. It's just the script to add the user. So let's say here, I want to add a new user. Add a new user for the login itself, new user. Oh, Super DBA, the guy that's already there. And whatever default scheme I want to give to it, DBO. And then assign it to a role like this guy by default. The template here, I'm making the guy DBO himself. And that's usually not a good idea. Then I would go for the roles, right? Data reader, data writer, and things like that. So this is my guy over here. So this is how you would create a new user. And this particular user, like I said, is a self-contained database. This new user here would be able to read only this database. If this server had another database in here, you would not be able to even see the other database on Management Studio, right? It's really self-contained. It's a concept that came along with SQL Server 2012. So that's how you create and manage, connect and manage your Azure SQL database. One last thing to wrap this up is when you, if you keep creating databases like this, at some point, unless if the database, the production database is really busy, you are paying for non-used times. And Microsoft understands that. Like, there are times during the day that my database has a peak utilization, but there are times when it's just idle. So if I can, what is the calculator? If I can put two databases together on the same performance level, but they have distinct peak times, or they can live together, they will not stress each out because they're not up to capacity all the time, up to processing capacity all the time. Instead of creating a single database, I can create an elastic pool, right? And the elastic pool is like you create a pool with a particular performance. You come for whatever performance you want to do. In this one here, if you look at the price, it's a little bit pricier. It's like 1.5 times more expensive than the single one. But the point is, you can have as many databases inside this pool. And again, if not all databases work at capacity, they can live together and share computing resources at the same time. Meaning, throughout the month, my HR database gets a week of peak utilization, and then it's kind of flattened below 30% utilization. and my accounting database gets another week, not the same week, with peak utilization, the rest of the month is just, again, 30–40% utilization. So instead of creating 2 SQL servers and 2 databases apart from each other, paying double price, I could pay 1.5 price and have these 2 databases together living in the same pool. The databases are not mixed up, data is always separated, all security isolations are in place, but the processing is shared among these 2 databases. This is the elastic pool option. You have the SQL Server. It's I have done this in pretty much all my clients. It's always a money saver for the clients, for my clients. So I did the demo, has explained that, and that's it.
There are a few more questions.
There are a few more questions. Before I go to the questions, one extra thing. There are other database data storage options there, and even database options that they are not SQL Server, right? They're like the blob storage. It's not a regular table. There is a table option in there if you have noticed it. If I go here to the portal, and if I go to my storage, let's take a look here on storage. You see there is this table storage in here. So a rookie, like a one-on-one level guy here that's exploring things around, say, oh, can create a new table. So there's like SQL Server, my new table, can create a new table in here. And oh, there you go, that's my table. That was easy, that was quick, but hold on, where are the columns? I create a table, but where are my columns? If I click in here, what do I find? So I can delete the table, but what's the structure of my table? This is a non-SQL storage, like MongoDB or something like that. But it's proprietary, right? It's non-SQL storage on a storage account, and has its particular API. You cannot do selects to this thing. Select, start, from, table doesn't work here. There's no SQL API to support this, right? This is just a very fast, very cheap non-SQL storage in Azure. So there is nothing to do with SQL Server, right? Is this icon here. The other one is Cosmos DB, which is this kind of the same guy, but on steroids. I shouldn't say the same guy because it's a completely different engine. It's compatible with 4 or 5 distinct APIs. It does have some support to some primitive or let's say simplified SQL queries. There is no aggregation, there is no computing, it's just more for querying in and out, right? No regular queries in and out. But there is no aggregation supported in there. And again, this is non-SQL. This guy here is non-SQL. But the most important one I want to give with you guys is the Azure Data Warehouse. See, Azure Data Warehouse, this icon here. People look at this and they think that this is like SQL Server on steroids, just more potent. And it's not. Azure Data Warehouse is not SQL Server, all right? You can do queries to it, you can create tables, you can do selects, but there are a lot, tons of restrictions. If Azure SQL Database is like 99% compatible with on-premise SQL Database, Azure Data Warehouse is less than 50% compatible, in my estimation, with on-premise SQL Database. Azure Data Warehouse is it's a computing service, like a glorified calculator. Is a computing service for massive amount of data. We're talking about here nothing less than 5 terabytes. 5 terabytes up, right? Because Azure SQL Database is limited to 4 terabytes. So when you think about 4 terabytes should most likely be kept in Azure SQL Database. And Azure Data Warehouse is just for really high volume of data when I need to aggregate this data or skew the data in some way, right? Batch processing. Does it have transaction support? It does. Does it allow commit and rollback? It does. But it should not be used as a replacement for SQL Server when you have more data, right? It's actually a data warehouse, as the name says, an aggregator and a skewer of data to create new visions of the same data, all right? So don't be fooled, don't be fooled. Don't design for these guys like a replacement for SQL Server you have on-premise, because they will not work, all right? Okay, Steve, so there is a question here. Let's see. What's under the other security options? What's under the other security options? Which should be...
I think that was under Management Studio. Then you would try.
Here, right? This one?
No, then you click on Connect.
Oh, okay. Here. Here?
That would be my guess.
Is this it? 3? Nope, it's not. Bad guess, Steve. So what's the security of the one which is logins? Yeah, here. Okay, so SQL security, right? Let me see. Databases, security logins. Yeah, that's the only thing. It's the only thing you have there, security logins. There's nothing else. This is at the server level, right? So these are those people did through the portal to add people has server level administrators, and these guys are over here, they can connect to any database in there. But they should be considered administrators and not end users, right? Regular users, application users, they should be created over here into the users for the database. Okay, so no option for users there. Nope, no options for it, just logins. All right, any more questions?
There was one more question above, and it's from Yelena on SQL Server on Azure. Can you create multiple databases on one instance?
That's the last pool. You should create through the last, you should do that through the last pool. So if I go back in here, is this one? Nope, where's my thing? Here. So if I go ahead and create another database, look at this, resource groups, Elena. If I go into the resource groups and I see here SQL database and SQL server, right? So I do have a server and there is only one database to this server, this guy here. So I can go ahead and create a new database, right, to the same server. But if I do that, I'm creating a single database, not an Elastic pool. So this is a S2, 250 gigabytes. I'm paying the same guy twice because this database is under this price tier. The price tier is for the database, not for the server. So if I do this, I will be paying twice because I have two single databases under the same price tier, but they are isolated. They're SQL database. Now, if that's the case, you can run. You know, that's what you need. You need dedicated database price tiers for these guys. But like I said, usually what we want to do is to create an Elastic pool, and in this case here, this is a new database. Let's go ahead, the resource again, create a resource, and SQL, where is SQL? SQL is here, right? Nope, SQL is not here, so should be database. Here, database, SQL Server. So let's say here, I'm going for a new server. So this is Elastic Server. And then the same guy here, same resource, and I say yes here, right, to the resource pool. So this guy is creating resource pool, and which price tier do I want to have for this resource pool? Let's go ahead and do a resource pool over here. Name my new pool, and the price tier, once again, let's go for this guy here. Which one is this? S0. I should see here, see all. Don't know why it's not showing see all. But this is a, okay, 100. Let's go this guy here, 100. Yeah. And that's my last pool with 100. Select it. So this is the price for this guy. Select. So just created a new Elastic pool, which is being selected over here. See, standard on Elastic Pool for my this is a database I'm creating, and the server I'm getting it to. And right now is creating the pool. So after the pool is created, when I create a new database, it can be on the same server. We don't call it instance, Elena, by the way. We call it the same server, because the idea of instance, it looks like an instance, feels like an instance. I completely agree. But you know, if you look behind the scenes, there's more into instance than there is into these servers over here. So if I go back to the server, is it already created? I'm still deploying the pool. So the pool will show up over here. See, there's the pool. See, the Elastic pool is over here. And I could start moving the database that I have over here into the Elastic pool, or when I create a new database, sorry about that, I can choose to have database in the pool I have created before. So it will be sharing the EDTUs that I have chosen for that particular pool. Does that make sense? There's a question there. If I understood correctly, you cannot run cross-database queries in Azure. Yes, that is right, Elena. So does that also apply to database within the same Elastic pool? Yes, it does apply for the data for any database, regardless if they're in the pool or not. The pool means they are sharing processing resources. It doesn't mean they have any mixing of or entangling of the data or the security profile. So they're completely isolated in terms of security and data. They're just being processed under the same CPU capacity, CPU and IO and memory. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that's actually the main difference with RDS, because in RDS you can do it.
Yeah, that's something we said.
Yeah. And also,
right.
there is a question from Sri talking about you were explaining of going from on-premise to the cloud. What about the other way around?
You can, through Management Studio. That's a good question. So if you're running a VM, you have the MDF files there, right? You can see the files. You can just copy these files over, download them, whatever you want to do. But if you are in platform has a service like this, you cannot get the database out of the cloud. You cannot like back up in the cloud and restore on premise. You cannot do that. What you can do is create a backpack file, and you can do that through Management Studio, and there are some options there in Portal too. And you can export your database, but you cannot copy the data files or restore platform has a service database into on-premise deployment of SQL Server. That you cannot do. Have I answered your question, Sri? Perfect. All right.
And the last question is about the link server.
What about link server?
Can you create a link server between databases on two different virtual machines?
Azure SQL Database, the PaaS offering, does not support linked server. If you're running a VM, then it's an option on the VM, because VM is like on-premise deployment, right? It's a regular or a SQL Server deployment. But platform has a service, the Azure SQL Database does not support linked server. There is one thing you can explore, which is called the Polybase. So Polybase is to get access to external data sources into SQL Server. And Polybase for Azure SQL Database supports external connection to other SQL databases. But it would be almost like you are creating an ODBC connection through a .NET driver to another database. And that slows down performance a lot. And security, again, is not shared across databases, so they're never under the same instance. Even if the database is in the same server on the cloud, they're never considered on the same instance. So should be considered ad hoc solution, an alternative for linked server, but not really a replacement for linked server. Does that make sense? Are you guys still there? I can't hear anybody. All right, I see some yeses on the chat window. Steven, if you're talking, maybe muted. I cannot hear you.
I don't. That's okay.
So we are 15 minutes over time. Sorry for keeping you guys for so long. I planned this for an hour, and you let me talking here. I've been talking for 2 hours and 15 minutes.
You did a good job on explaining Azure.
Well, thank you. Appreciate. I hope you guys can take something out of this.
Any more questions?
You good? All right. So, Steve, thank you. Steve, thank you so much for the opportunity, and thanks for inviting me here. Next time, I want to be there in Malibu.
No problem. Thank you, Armando. Thank you to all, and good night.
Have a good one, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.